Like every other engineer, as soon as the big chat GPT kind of bump happened, I started to see how I could apply AI to my life. And one of those things was obviously Cursor, applying Claude Code, using code gen tools. And it was very fantastic. I mean, when I first started using them, it felt like my job was gone. Like, surely engineers won't be needed in the future. And then I started to see the problems that I would be solving day to day. It was more architecture, leadership, design. And I was a senior engineer at that point, and I still felt my role getting elevated day over day. I felt like a staff engineer and then a distinguished engineer. And the piece that was missing was there's so much of this job that it doesn't do for me. The testing, the deployment, the terminal commands. There's just so much of it where I'm like, that's so easy. Why don't you just do that for me? And so when I couldn't find that tool, I said, okay, let me quit and I'm going to start to build this myself.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have Karan Grover on the mic. He is a 3-time founder, YC alum, former Amazon ML engineer, and now the co-founder of Kanu AI, where he's building an AI engineer that takes a company's roadmap from prompt to production. Very cool. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian.
Well, I'd love to get your origin story. What's your background?
Yeah, so I started off in a suburb outside of Vancouver, Canada, born and raised, and then went to the University of British Columbia. I started off doing medical, actually, and then switched over to computer science after taking a comp sci course.
You walked out on your MCAT. What does that mean?
I was sitting in the MCAT and I was about 30 minutes in, and I just realized I don't like this. I didn't like studying for this. I didn't like any part of this. And so I stood up and I went to the person who was kind of proctoring the exam.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I'd like to go. And she started yelling at me. She said, if you want to go to the bathroom, you have to ask my permission. And I said, no, I don't want to go to the bathroom. I just want to leave. And then she thought that I was leaving because she yelled at me. And so she took it back. She's like, no, it's okay. You can go to the bathroom, but I'm just telling you, you have to let me know. And I was like, no, actually, I just don't want to do this anymore. And so I left and I called my best friend and I told him, hey, I'm going to get a job at Google. I didn't get a job at Google, but I did end up at Amazon.
I mean, it's the next best thing. Google's so hard to get a job at, especially when you're young. What was your undergrad in? It was like pre-med?
So it started off as pre-med and then ended as computer science.
Okay, nice. Wow.
Yeah, Bachelor of Science in Comp Sci at UBC in Canada.
I think we talked about this, but I'm Canadian. I was born in Seattle. My mom was born in Vancouver, and my grandparents are from Saskatchewan, of all places.
Yeah.
And then my great-grandparents are, from all over Europe. But yeah, so I got Canadian roots as well.
Yeah, for a little while there, we were hiring just Canadians accidentally. Like we just would hire and they'd make it through the interview process and somehow it'd come up and we'd realize we had like a 4 or 5 person company of just Canadians accidentally.
Bias in hiring, hiring people like you.
Yeah, so, exactly.
What do you think were the earliest experiences that pulled you away from medicine and more towards like engineering and problem solving?
Yeah, I definitely had really strong problem solving roots from my parents. They're both, very analytical, very grounded in solving problems. But I think also just going through an experience in comp sci for the first time, it just felt like going through and solving puzzles all the time. And so that's kind of what swayed me towards it. Just felt more fun.
Yeah. So you had a company before that helped blind individuals hear their surroundings. That's pretty incredible. What drove you to work on that problem so early in your career?
Yeah, I've always been one to want to apply things right away. So as soon as I feel like I've learned a new skill set, I just really believe that the best way to hone it is by practicing it. And so when I felt like I had a good grasp on computer science, I thought, okay, let me go through and find something to apply this on. And a newsletter came across from the comp sci department and it said that this other comp sci student had this problem where there was a colleague of theirs who was blind and had come in one day to work because they'd hit their head on a construction sign. And they wanted to solve for that problem. And I really wanted to help them do that. And so I joined their startup and got to applying.
That's awesome. I have here in the notes that you competed in and won an Ericsson Innovation Award. What was that about and what kind of lessons did you take away from that?
Yeah, we actually got to meet the Prince of Sweden after we came first place and so we got flown out there. And it was a really fantastic experience. We got to compete against 862 other universities and research teams from around the world, including MIT was there as well. And we got to showcase our research. And at the end of the day, we were the lucky winners and got to really get our name out there.
That's really cool. Yeah. And so when you think back to SoundVision, what was that what worked and what didn't, and what stayed with you in that experience?
When I was at SoundVision, the person who had originally started the company, the very first founder, when we were at the Ericsson Innovation Awards, actually, they sat down with me and they told me that I ramble too much. And that was very hard feedback to get at that time. And I didn't really agree with them. I thought everything that I said was creating value. But I started to reflect and really look back at what I was saying. And I realized, like, hey, yeah, I would kind of just drag out for 5 minutes at a time on a topic. And he said you really need to look at every word that you're saying and almost treat it like every word you say costs a quarter. And would you say as much? And so that's when I started to refine my sentences more. And that's a lot of the positive feedback I've started to get now later in my life, is being able to take large topics and boil them down to a few sentences.
That's such good advice. And I think about all the really amazing executives I've worked with over the years at Amazon and Microsoft and other places, unicorn startups. They don't say a lot. Yeah, they're just kind of quiet types. They'll ask a question. They might say a few words. They'll have these like dramatic pauses, like kind of like Obama-esque kind of pauses.
Yeah.
And not just blabber on, right? That's really good advice.
And it feels so,
costs a quarter.
yeah, exactly. And it feels so impactful too over time, because when people know around you that when you're saying something that you've thought through it, they'll pay a little bit more attention.
Yeah. It's like if you silently pause, people will actually fill the space with, they'll project in their own feelings and thoughts and emotions. And then you kind of get to pause and react to that again. And then when you finally say something, they'll really listen, right?
What a great negotiation tactic as well. Just saying nothing and then
just say nothing and just kind of sit there and think about it.
Yeah.
People are uncomfortable with silence. Even just now, like we're recording the podcast, you went silent for a second. I was like, I waited about 5 seconds. I was like, okay, maybe he didn't hear the question.
Yeah. Anyway. That's a skill on its own, to be honest, is just being really comfortable with pauses. It's not one I've mastered, but it's a good skill.
No, me neither. I'm a big talker. So you were also at Deloitte and Best Buy, and you saw large orgs up close. What did those environments teach you about shipping and leadership?
Yeah, definitely. So I was always one to kind of step outside of my comfort zone. I would always do that even at a young age. And at Deloitte and Best Buy, something that I learned is just ask. If you go up and ask something that you think is absolutely outrageous, sometimes you get back, sure, we'd love to do that. And one of the examples is actually the internship itself. So Best Buy Canada at that time didn't have an internship program. And so just a lot of pestering and a lot of asking, I was able to get in as their first intern in their engineering department. And now dozens of other engineers have come after the fact. But that's one example. The second is just going up to directors and VPs and even the president and just saying, hey, I want to have a conversation. Here's what the agenda is. You'd be surprised how often it works.
That's amazing. Somehow you ended up at Amazon. What's the story there?
So I got to go to Amazon, actually just went through their normal channels. I put my resume into the bucket, went through the interview process, and was lucky enough to land an internship. And got to work on some very, very cool projects over there and make a lot of impact, and carried through the just ask mentality. So I got to work with VPs and directors and folks that my fellow colleagues didn't have access to at the time.
And then at some point you went to YC the first time, right? Because you've been to YC twice, right? And we'll cover the second time, but the first time was back in winter 22. And tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so I've been to YC once and then A16Z Speedrun the second time.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the first time was, winter 22. So that experience was amazing. We got the opportunity to go in as Canadian founders, start the company in Vancouver, Canada as well, and got to really experience speed for the first time in, I think, my life. We went from this idea of, hey, we're going to help Canadians buy houses that they'd never be able to afford or purchase otherwise, and went within months to working with some of the largest banks in Canada, working with VPs, getting $1 million facilities for purchasing houses and actually selling houses. And that kind of speed was just, looking back, I still don't believe it.
And was that all kind of the wind in your sails was the YC network, basically going through YC and being able to kind of get those introductions and stuff?
Yeah, so I think YC really pushed that just ask mentality much further. So don't just ask of your director or VP. It was, hey, you can just reach out to the mayor of the city and ask for a conversation, or ask Brian for an introduction to the most powerful person that he knows. And Brian will usually help you out because he wants to see you win too. And so that's,
especially if you're in the portfolio, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that helps. And so that's what we did.
I tell all my founders, I'm like, I don't care who it is. I'll introduce you to the president of the United States. I could care less.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people want to see founders win. And, we're
Yeah.
taking a chance and they're willing to help out however they can. And so we actually got to meet mayors, leaders in government, and large banking execs. And that's how we were able to get the facilities to be able to actually sell homes in Canada.
What was the kind of the story of True Place, and did you go to DoorDash and Amazon next, or what was the kind of chronology here?
Yeah, so I've been at Amazon a few times. So I started off as an Amazon intern, and then I went and I worked at Amazon for about a year and a half. I got promoted to SD2. We worked on some really cool stuff there, like 2-hour shipping and even 15-minute ultra fast shipping, and worked some cool problems. And then after that, went to DoorDash to work on, similar problems around last mile fulfillment and monetary refund automation and things like that. And then I quit DoorDash 9 months in, although I really liked it, but we got into YC, and so I really wanted to do that as well. And yeah,
Also a YC company too, DoorDash, so I'm sure they understood.
yeah, exactly. Tony Zhu is awesome, and yeah, and the idea was kind of, I'd watched my parents make a lot of their wealth coming from nothing to really establish in Canada because of housing. They knew that as soon as they got here, they wanted to buy a house, and then they slowly upgraded their homes over time and worked really hard. And I wanted every Canadian to have access to that. And it just felt like it was so out of reach because the income was growing at 3% year over year, but houses were growing at 7+% year over year. And so it just felt like a problem that no one was ever going to win.
Mm.
And so the premise of the business was, what if we just give you the last 50K that you need for your down payment, and you're able to purchase this house, live in it, build a family in it, and all these amazing things that come with home ownership. And then on the back end, when this house appreciates and you make a bunch of profit, then we'll take a small sliver of that profit that you wouldn't have otherwise had without us as the return to the
Plus
fund.
the principal, obviously, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So effectively like a second financing mortgage or something. I think I recall seeing your business back when you guys, did we meet when you guys were in Winter 22?
I don't know if we met back then, but
Yeah. I mean,
I
that's
think
4
we
years
talked
ago,
about
so
it
it's hard to
recently.
remember. I know I
Yeah.
didn't invest. I mean, what happened to the business and what are some takeaways from it?
I think the biggest takeaway was that housing and problems where you have to take external dependencies are very difficult. So we took an external dependency on a very large bank. We took an external dependency on the government, on a government's financing program, and any of these change policy, interest rates, taxes, it crushes the
Politicians,
business.
elections. Yeah.
Number one lesson I learned out of that business. And that's what happened ultimately to us. We had interest rates change and the finance of the model didn't work.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. This is something I've actually integrated into my startup scorecard. I have this startup scorecard I use to score startups with AI.
Yeah.
And I had one that shut down recently. And, we analyzed it and did a postmortem. And, I always meet the founder. I'm like, what did we get wrong here? And blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
that was like one of the key things that I've added to my evaluation criteria recently is the regulatory single point of failure.
Yeah.
Like what is the black swan or even gray swan event that can like come in and wipe this startup out? And
Totally.
when you have like a banking partner or a government partner or both, like,
Yeah.
oof, yeah.
And it's not predictable because it's, we did our back testing. We said in the last 30 years, the probability of it getting so bad that we have to shut the business down is like a sliver. And that sliver is what happened. So
Yeah, nobody anticipated rates to, triple overnight or whatever it was. So,
yeah.
And then what did you do after that?
Yeah, so I went back to Amazon after that and I worked on a lot of different really cool problems. I got to work on machine learning. We got to work on post-training, Bedrock for Amazon as well. And I also got to work with some really, really phenomenal mentors there. And that was the key part for me is I said, if I'm ever going back to not founding a business, I need to be learning 10x what I would be learning in university or founding a business. And as long as that was true, I was there. And then, the itch kind of being a founder just continued and continued to grow until one day I said, I need to leave again.
Yeah. And so you're there and you're seeing this thing with ML scaling. What's the origin story around Kanu?
Yeah. Like every other engineer, as soon as the big chat GPT kind of bump happened, I started to see how I could apply AI to my life. And one of those things was obviously Cursor, Clang, Claude Code, using code gen tools. And it was very fantastic. I mean, when I first started using them, it felt like my job was gone. Like, surely engineers won't be needed in the future. And then I started to see the problems that I would be solving day to day. It was more architecture, leadership, design. And I was a senior engineer at that point. And I still felt my role getting elevated day over day. I felt like a staff engineer and then a distinguished engineer. And the piece that was missing from Cursor and Claude Code was there's so much of this job that it doesn't do for me. The testing, the deployment, the terminal commands. There's just so much of it where I'm like, that's so easy. Why don't you just do that for me? And so when I couldn't find that tool, I said, okay, let me quit and I'm going to start to build this myself. And that's what we did at Kanu.
So how did you convince your co-founder to join you?
I have been talking to Harsh since 2018 or 17, I think. We worked at Deloitte together in their first AI department. It was called Omni AI. It was the first of its kind in Canada. Yeah.
I think I remember that one. Yeah.
We got to work in the
I was
first year.
leading AI at Amazon back in 2018 and building a bunch of AI before that.
And yeah, so they're like a very strong AWS partner. And so
right, yeah. That's why I remember Omni. I kind of remember the I mean, it's been 7 years since I've heard that phrase. But yeah.
That's fantastic. That's really cool that it's kind of like made its way through the market all the way to Amazon. Yeah, we got the chance to work on some really cool problems. We were working on computer vision for large grocery chains and all those fun applications. And Harsh and I became very close at that point, and we stayed in touch throughout our careers, calling each other maybe once a week, even though we were in different locations. And the commonality was that every single week we would talk about how one day we're going to start a business together and one day we're going to start a business.
You're a guy and he's a guy and you guys would talk to each other on the phone?
Literally, we would call each other and we would just be like, all right, we're going to start a business one day. We're going to start a business one day.
Because I never talk to any of my guy friends, like maybe a few times a year,
Really? Yeah. I only have Harsh to thank for that because I don't think I would ever pick up the phone and call somebody. But Harsh calls all of his friends on a weekly basis. He is so good at staying in touch with people. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, good lesson, I think, for all of us.
Stay in touch with my my oldest friends as we play video games together.
Yes.
So I talk on the Discord basically with them.
Discord.
While we're playing a video game,
Before Kanu, Harsh and I also used to play PS5, but the PS5 is like fully collected dust over the last like 7 months.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're a founder, you have no time. You have to be a VC to play video games. You can't.
You said it, not me. Yeah, it's been so interesting, but like literally one of those days I was like, I called him instead of him calling me, and I was like, hey, we're starting a business now. Like I'm quitting my job. I've already quit my job. You quit your job. And before I had finished the sentence, he's like, done. Yeah. And I was like, do you want to know what the idea is? And he's like, yeah, okay, tell me the idea. And we hashed it out.
He's like ready to join. He's like, all right, I got this idea. Let's do it. And he's like, all right, let's do it. And I'm like, wait, let me tell you about the idea first.
Let me tell you. Yeah. I was almost like, wait, I feel like you should know the idea before you say yes. But I think him and I had just like, we were just so close, and it's always something that we spoke about. And so when the time came, it was like a no-brainer for him, no-brainer for me.
Yeah. What's been the biggest engineering challenges that you guys have taken on, taking something from a roadmap, from a prompt to production?
Yeah, I think when you're building out a coding agent, the success really comes where you can mimic a human behavior without having to verbosely write out 1,000 tools for every little thing that we do. And so for us, the 3 big buckets we thought are engineering, which is code generation. That's a solved problem, right?
Yeah,
so we know how to do that.
4.5 is ridiculous, right?
Phenomenal model and really good at solving for code gen. And there's publicly available, resources about how to do code gen and optimize for that and all that fun stuff. So we built that out. We believe we built out a better version of it, but that's not the game changer of Kanu. The game changer is we said, 2, we've been working in cloud, specifically like AWS, for the last 8 years. We know that every problem comes back to the cloud. Whether you're abstracted away from it as an engineer because your DevOps team takes care of it, it's still coming back to the cloud because that's how most enterprises service their customers. And then the third was QA. It's that unsexy term where no engineer wants to do the QA. But what's awesome about Amazon, and you know this, Brian, is that Amazon forces you to do all 3. You're your own QA, you're your own engineer, and you're your own DevOps.
As an engineer, you have to do all 3. I guess I didn't know that about Amazon. By the time I got to Amazon, I was one step removed from engineering. So I was like a technical BD, but they wanted somebody that had built AI products to lead AI and launch SageMaker Marketplace while I was there. I was more like the customer-facing guy on the technical team. So I did not know the engineers there are their own QA and what else?
And DevOps. So if you look at a company like, let's say, DoorDash, you have a platform team where they take care of all the AWS stuff and you just write logic. And so now this DevOps role, I've always experienced it for myself, but now other engineers in companies like DoorDash are starting to experience their roles getting elevated, and they now have to do QA and DevOps and engineering, things I've always experienced since day one on Amazon.
Well, especially because a lot of the logic's being generated now by the AI.
Exactly. So if you're not doing the logic, then you have to think about latency and cost and architecture. And it comes back to the cloud. It always comes back to the cloud. There's a reason AWS is so successful. And so we said, okay, let's build these three agents so that Kanu can manage all and it can kind of interconnect. So now what Kanu can do is if you say, I want to make a chatbot or I want to upgrade my existing legacy system from Java 8 to 21, what Kanu will do is it will go into your AWS account. It's a publicly approved marketplace application. You download it, it takes 5 minutes, understands your AWS system, understands all your app code, your infrastructure, and then it just does it. And then once it's completed it, let's say we're going with the Java 8 to 21 migration, it will call your APIs and say, oh, did I do it right? Oh, no, I forgot this one piece. Okay, I'm going to go fix that. Oh, okay, did I do it right now? And it just iterates on that until it's achieved the success criteria and gives it back to you and says, hey, I'm done. Let me know what you think.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of done for you. How has the AWS marketplace been for you guys?
It's been a little bit surprising in how long the approval process took, but I don't mock them for it because I feel better saying we're an approved marketplace application, knowing what we had to go through to get approved.
Yeah, because they don't just let anybody into the AWS marketplace. They do a pretty rigorous technical and security screening. You're going to be deploying into customer tenants, into their infrastructure, and they want to make sure everything's buttoned up.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it kind of felt like we're doing our SOC 2 Type 2 and we're in the audit phase there. It felt almost as rigorous, if not more rigorous, to get through the marketplace application.
That's amazing. And then how has do you think that makes it easier to acquire customers or for customers to find you? How is I know the technical impact. What about the business impact?
I think it's about trust. So we can go to a Fortune 500 company and say, yes, we're in the audit for SOC 2 Type 2, but also AWS approved us. And we're putting this application in your enterprise account with a lot of information that you'd like to keep safe. So not only do we have those security checks, but also Kanu has no egress outside of your AWS account. Everything is completely local there. And so that is really a huge burden.
So you're deploying like Kubernetes, like containers inside their tenant, basically?
Exactly. So we have our full stack, all model code, everything is all inside of their stack. And so they have to pay for the hosting, which is, nominal if you're a large enterprise. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah.
That's cool. So it's like a software license. How do you guys price it?
Yeah, we price it by AWS account. So how many apps you download.
Apps you download. What does that mean?
Yeah. So let's say you have 5 different products that have 5 different AWS accounts. So we'll charge you per the 5 AWS. So every time you download the app onto an account, you get charged monthly.
Got it. Wow. So how do you balance the abstraction with letting engineers stay in the loop where needed?
This is the problem that we are still perfecting. And I think we've done it better than every other company out there. What we realize is that key insight that I mentioned earlier is our roles as engineers are getting elevated. But one thing I will never let happen as an engineer is an AI deploy something to my production without me understanding what just happened. And so how do you find that gap where I don't have to review every line of code, but I feel very confident about what's inside of this code base? And so we have built out this system where it's human in the loop. It will ask you to make key decisions. But one thing that we found is at Amazon, at AWS, they have so many different offerings, and there might be one kind of hidden in that corner that I don't even know about as an engineer that could have solved all of my problems. And so what Kanu will do is it'll make you recommendations. I've looked through the internet. I've looked through AWS. This are your top 3 solutions to solving this problem. Which one would you like? And then it gives you the option to select, and then it gives you the option to dive deeper. How would you code this out? Kanu will tell you. How would you do this? How are you going to handle latency? And you just chat back and forth with it about these problems. And then once Kanu feels confident and you feel confident that you've understood the problem properly and selected the right solution, then it continues forward.
How much of Amazon culture do you think you've ingrained inside of Kanu? Because what you're describing almost to me sounds like a PRFAQ, like doc review.
Whether intentional or not, it's I think Amazon has some really great principles. You make up your own mind about the company, but their values that Jeff Bezos kind of instilled at the beginning. I don't know about you when you were there, but every leadership principle I knew in and out, and I could tell you everything about it.
Well,
right?
People pull them out. They're like, I'm going to disagree and commit here. They're like,
totally.
People just kind of pull them out. And
I think that's what Jeff Bezos got right in the beginning days is he built out these systems where whether he was in the room or not, or whether the customer was in the room or not, those systems would be adhered to. The hiring is always the best because of bar raisers. Security is always done because of security reviews. And this like system he's built out, and I think those systems really help startups succeed. And so that's why we kind of follow
I love
some.
that. What's been the biggest surprise about building Kanu so far? Like how customers have used it, or just any surprises?
We got this one customer that we onboarded. They had scoped a product at 3 months with Cursor to completion. And they told me a couple days later, they got it done in 2 days to production. And I knew we had something special, but holy smokes, when they told me that, I was shocked. And it was a Fortune 500 company too.
Wow. So they had this project, they're going to build this thing with Cursor. And they
with
thought,
Cursor,
it's going to take us 90 days to fully build this, test it, deploy it, make it scalable in production, production ready, fully QA'd, all the infrastructure, dev opt out, if that's a word.
Yeah.
They did it in a couple days with your platform.
Yeah, 2 days.
That's amazing.
To production. Yeah, I was absolutely shocked. And so now we speak to, we're speaking to Fortune 50s, for example, and we say, okay, what's your problem? What are you facing? What's the engineering department look like? And, these companies have 5,000 plus engineers.
Yeah.
And it's the same problem. Hey, my engineer will do this with Cursor, but then there's like this huge part that they can't do, and they tell me they can't do it. And so now my roadmap is delayed. And so what if you didn't have to? What if while you were sleeping, Kanu was testing your Jackson upgrade?
Yeah, that's really amazing. What have you learned from your early customers about the real bottlenecks in software development teams?
Yeah, it's tough. I think us engineers are so good at solving ambiguous problems. I mean, that's kind of why we're in this role. But I think that sometimes we get wrapped up in company, like enterprise. For example, if you're Microsoft, let's say, you're fantastic at building software, but you also have software that's been around for 15 plus years that nobody knows the ins and outs of. And eventually it starts sparking and you say, okay, well, let me just staff a team of 5 engineers on this and they'll get it done. And yes, they will, but those engineers aren't happy about it because we want to be solving problems that impact the world, not how to do system upgrades.
Turns out the Python version's from 2016 and, it's barely running. It's just kicking off codes left and right.
If you have an AWS account, like you see the emails, how many times a week do you get like notice of deprecation, or like end of version life? And you're just like, geez, like I don't want to do this.
Yeah. But that's where you guys can shine. You can come in and kind of crawl the code base, understand, do the migration, do the testing. You're one of the unique founders that have done both YC and Speedrun. I'd love to maybe walk us through the process of, I see a lot of people go back to YC for a second time. I even thought back in my mind that you went back to YC for the second time. What made you choose Speedrun the second time around for an accelerator? And why even do an accelerator at all? Because you've already kind of been through one.
For the accelerator question, it was just, to be honest, like that YC experience, the amount of work you can achieve in a 3-month period, it's just mind boggling. And it happens because you're in that pressure cooker. Like your colleague beside you has just gone from 0 to 200K ARR in the last 3 weeks.
Like your batchmate in your batch group or whatever. Yeah.
Totally. And you're not going to sit there and be like, oh yeah, like there's an excuse for it. You're just gonna be like, no, how do I get to 200K ARR too?
Well, and they can kind of tell you, like, we tried this marketing channel, we tried that marketing channel, we did this and that.
Totally.
Like, oh, cool idea. And you're kind of all helping each other.
It's this like weird experience, just like you said, where you're competing against each other, but you're also helping each other. It's like, if I can do anything to help you get a sale, I will do it. Right. But also I want to beat you in revenue. So it's so fun. And so
kind of like gamifies it. It's almost like pledging for like a frat in college or something.
Totally.
Like a brotherhood,
Yeah. Honestly, it is like it, and you want the best for your brothers, and then you also want the best for yourself. So yeah, it's we keep pushing. So that's why the accelerator. And then in terms of A16Z, YC is at the top of their game, and A16Z are at the top of their game.
You're in cohort 4 for Speedrun?
5. Speedrun 5.
Okay, so it was pretty recent. Okay, yeah.
And so I just wanted to experience both, to be honest. Like maybe it's a little greedy of me, but I just wanted to see.
That's awesome. And how do they compare? What are your kind of some of your takeaways? Maybe there's some founders listening that are applying to both or considering what, maybe they have offers for both.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't think you can go wrong with your decision. I really liked my time at A16Z Speedrun, and it's very fresh in my mind, so I'll tell you about it. I had amazing partners. For example, Josh Liu, he was our partner for the cohort. I cannot imagine I could not have built this business without Josh's, support and mentorship. And then amazing other partners like Macy, Tom, the Jordans, Bella, Ryan, Lester, these people that I just mentioned, they helped us with everything hands on, like media, marketing, hiring. They'll join hiring calls for you if you ask them to. And it's just so many critical parts of the business that I don't have enough hands or brains to do. And they'll just step in and just say, hey, we've perfected this. This is our craft.
Yeah, we've done it
Here's some
hundreds of
help.
times. We know how to do this.
Exactly.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. It almost
Yeah.
feels like I feel like YC's kind of veered a little bit earlier since 2022, since Gary Tan took over, with
Yeah.
a lot more like teams and ideas coming in and kind of going 0 to 100 or 200K of revenue.
Yeah.
Speedrun for me felt like a lot more mature for some reason. Some
Mm.
of the companies were, I mean, they're all coming out at like 30 caps or whatever in both programs now, but I don't know, like some of the speedrun companies felt a lot more further along,
Mm.
almost into priced round or Series A territory.
I wonder how much of that comes from A16Z being like such a prominent multi-stage, where I wonder if some of that kind of trickled into the founder
Yeah, because
mentality.
YC's not as much of a multi-stage. I think they do follow on investments, but I mean, A16Z is they can be with you all the way to IPO, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a fantastic experience. I think my first hire was through A16Z Partners. Our first customer was through an A16Z introduction. And then we pivoted within the batch, like we kind of, maybe a progression is a better word than a pivot. And that came with a lot of guidance from our mentor on just reaffirming like, hey, trust your gut, trust what the customer told you, and move in that direction confidently.
Yeah. Back to AI and engineering. Where do you
Yeah.
think AI engineering tools will accelerate first? I mean, you have greenfield apps, legacy systems, internal tools, or other things.
Yeah, I think to be honest, a lot of companies take on Greenfield because it's a really easy problem. Like we had Greenfield solved to pretty high caliber very quickly, but the difficulty comes in legacy systems and existing systems.
Pulling them forward. Yeah.
Exactly. How do you take something with 1,000 cloud resources that has been around for 15 years and like 200,000 lines of code and understand that without summarization
I
and
think you just
knowledge
gave a
graphs?
solution architect like a heart attack when you said that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's actually such a good point. Like, how do you do that and then convey to the solutions architect or the engineer how this has been done without throwing, 10,000 line PR in their face and saying, hey, go figure it out?
Right. So kind of looking forward a little bit. How do you picture software development changing over the next, 3 years? I mean, it's already changed so much in the last 3 years.
Yeah. I think that with Kanu, you're going to see this elevation, just how I felt in my early days of engineering, where you're becoming the staff engineer of the team. Maybe we'll see less junior engineers, less mid-level engineers, and more of these pizza teams, like two pizza teams. That's the Amazon saying. You have 8 engineers. Now maybe you'll see a product and then one engineer orchestrating with an agent like Kanu.
Yeah, it's like one PM, one designer, one engineer, and they're all
Yeah.
orchestrating their agents.
Totally. I love how you said that because it's almost like, we were talking about DevOps and QA and engineering morphing. Now maybe we'll see product and engineering and all of that turn into just one role.
Yeah, I was talking to another founder about that. That tries to take your designs into code, bridging the gap between Figma and like fully developed code. And he's seeing on the ground that kind of the designer and the PM are kind of merging with maybe the front end engineer. It's all becoming like one person almost that orchestrates AI. Everybody can be 5 or 10x more efficient in all these roles. So the roles just tend to merge. If you could talk to the AI and you have Opus and you have tools like Kanu, like you can sort of get all this stuff done by just being able to explain to the AI what you need.
Totally. And like if I was graduating right now in CS, I think that's exactly what I would do. I'd go through and learn all of these tools. For example, the AI for design, the AI for QA, Kanu, learn how to orchestrate these very effectively. And then two, you have the entire corpus of the internet at your fingers, asking very deep questions. How do you do best practices in DevOps and design? And just really elevating your role and treating yourself like a staff engineer today. And you'll be, hard pressed to find a founder that wouldn't want to hire you.
What do you think founders and companies, Fortune 50 for that matter, often misunderstand about deploying agents in production environments like you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think you have to choose the right agent because you have to make sure the incentives are aligned. With traditional applications, what you'll find is, okay, sure, it works if you prompt it really well, or you learn how to orchestrate it, or all of these difficult things. And then you'll throw it into maybe a startup and it works fantastic. But if you throw it into an enterprise, we know this. You have 5,000 engineers. They're not all on the same page. We need to make sure that this system is well adopted. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to go do like decades of training to help everyone get elevated? And then by then the agent is obsolete. So it just doesn't work. So you need your system to have incentives aligned with what you want to achieve as an organization. And that's why Kanu, some engineers, when they first try it, they're frustrated. They're like, it's forcing me to define the product really well, or it's forcing me to define what I want, and it won't just let me hit start. And the reason is because we know that product portion of the problem solving is actually really important. Like you said, the pure FAQ. You need to understand what you're building, and the agent, more importantly, needs to know what you're building before it can go off and do it, so it knows how to succeed. And that's why we built that.
Yeah. PRFAQ, for anybody listening doesn't know what we're talking about, is a press release, frequently asked question. It's a 6-pager document that Amazon uses internally to review project proposals, basically. Release, and then you have like 5 pages of FAQs. And really, you have like 20 pages of FAQs, and then you sort of concatenate them, condense them down to 5 pages or so.
And it's a forcing function. You have to understand what you're building. You're not going to get engineering resources if you don't know what you're building. And so that's what Kanu says is, okay, you want to build a chatbot. Great. What's the goals? Low latency, customers, internal, external. And it's just going to push you and ask you these questions, because then when it gets to the QA stage, after it's done the code gen and the DevOps, it's going to say, okay, this person told me latency is a concern. I'm going to ping this API until I can get it under 50 milliseconds of latency.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, let's look out long term. What do you see? What's the long term vision for what you guys are doing, and where do you think things end up 5 or 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think we're going to be the lead in that change to elevating the engineering role across the world. And we're starting to see it already. We're seeing, like I said, the 3-month project in 2 days. Now they'll be able to deliver so much more on their roadmap, that team. And so we'll start to see that happening. And then 2, I think we'll be the driver behind really, really amazing problems being solved. Because if you can get out of the weeds of all these menial tasks you don't want to do, imagine the problems you could think of, the problems you could solve.
Yeah. It was funny. I was kind of giggling to myself when you said the 1 quarter project in 2 days, because 10 years ago when I was still a PM, our quarterly roadmap, our 4-quarter roadmap we really got Q1 done in 4 quarters. So it would take us like all year to just get the stuff that we thought we'd do in 1 quarter done.
Totally. Because
now the
Q1
inverse is almost true. Now we're like, oh, well, we just got like our whole year's worth of stuff done in a quarter or less. Like, so the velocity is just so much faster.
I mean, like enterprises, you spend Q1 talking about what you're going to do this year and Q4 talking about what you're going to do next year. So if you're lucky, you have 6 months in there of actual work. But yeah, like imagine what you could do with all that extra time. I mean, our team, when we use Kanu, we don't do like menial features or like random tasks that we don't want to do. We're thinking about the big problems. How do we change the world?
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up with some wrap-up questions. I used to call them rapid fire, but these tend to be kind of medium length questions. Which skill from your Amazon ML days has proven most valuable at Kanu?
I think really learning how the LLMs work very deeply. And there's some really great videos on YouTube as well to kind of help understand that. But that helps inform why the LLM behaves the way it behaves sometimes.
Like the 3 blue, 1 brown videos? Those are really good. Yeah.
Or like Andrej, like he's amazing. Yeah, he has like a 4-hour video. He's a UBC alumni as well.
Yeah, that's right. What's one belief about AI agents you've changed your mind about in the past 12 months?
I think I used to think back in the day that agents couldn't do these long polling tasks. And the more I worked in AI, the more I worked in ML. I agree that, sure, we're not going to see this overnight, iRobot type of history, but we are going to see a lot of the tasks that we don't want to do being replaced with agents. And that's a good thing. Like engineers aren't going anywhere. Engineers are here to stay, but our job is getting elevated.
Yeah, I like that. Well, yeah, I mean, you were describing it. So junior engineers are becoming senior engineers, and senior engineers are becoming staff, and staff are becoming like architects, basically,
That made me think of my very first manager at Amazon. I told him I'm going to be an SD2. My goal is to get to SD2 in record time. I don't want anyone to have got there as fast as me. And he's like, if you want to do that, then you better be thinking about how to get to principal engineer in record time, because you got to shoot for the moon, right? And then, or shoot for the stars, land on the moon, whatever the saying is.
When you think about dev teams today, what is the single most underrated engineering bottleneck?
I think it is going to be the enterprise process. It's the talking about next year, debriefing next year or last year. Those processes really slow us down. We need to get back to the core of engineering.
Which founder habit from your first startup would you never repeat?
It's the dependencies on the external companies. I think that's one I would never do. And then the second is I would make sure always to have radically true communication. I think bottling feelings up and how you feel about a situation or a person is just such a bad thing to do as a founder. You can learn how to communicate better and more empathetically, but you have to tell the truth because otherwise you're just going to blow up one day and let it all out and then your company's over.
What's the most surprising thing users have done with Kanu that you didn't expect? I guess we had the 3-month, 2-day thing, but
3 months and 2 days. Yeah. I've seen some really cool projects. Like I've seen things that used to take us years to build. Like I remember building chatbots before ChatGPT. That felt like the hardest task in the
I did
world.
that.
And
back
really, yeah.
Before I joined Amazon in 2018, I was at a company called Conversica. They're still around, but when I joined, they're an AI company. This is 2017, but they had
Yeah.
all regular expressions under the hood.
Yeah.
That was it. So it's just basically like text recognition, bag of words stuff,
Yeah.
So we did actually revamp it all with intents and entities and, some rudimentary sentence construction and stuff like that. But it was pretty archaic compared to what we have today.
Yeah. It's
That was
so
8 years ago,
yeah. Like that's what I was gonna say. You think back and you're like back in the days, but it's like no, back in the days was like maybe 4 years ago.
I mean, back
Yeah.
in the day before
Yeah.
LLMs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah, we almost have to like qualify everything like before LLMs and after now. It's kind of like before cloud, after cloud. It's that big of a shift,
Yeah, it feels like that. The same, I know people like to say like the internet, like I definitely see the parallels there. It's the invention of the internet, but I really like the cloud shift because the cloud shift was a huge paradigm
Yeah.
shift.
That was a huge, I would say my theory is, and I think other people have said this, is that the cloud shift actually allowed for angel investing because, I mean, there were angels before that, but that's really when you could be a really early investor because you just have 2 or 3 founders with a laptop and the cloud just building stuff and delivering it. Before then, you
Totally.
really had to spend millions of dollars to set up your infra just to get your
Yeah,
like website out there to
totally.
open business. So you've like literally your seed round was like millions of dollars just so you could like buy servers and like get your infrastructure up.
Yeah. And like the faster we've learned to build as engineers, the more the clouds have benefited over time. Like we're all spinning up 100 AI projects a week now, and the clouds benefit AWS, Azure, GCP. But that's also why they love Kanu so much because now we're saying, hey, even with Cursor, if you can only do it in 3 months, now you can do it in 2 days. Well, the clouds would love that because that means more infrastructure running on there.
More
Yeah.
meters are spinning. So do you like spin up? Will a customer just like at the end of the day like spin up Kanu? How long can Kanu like run on its own? Just like run and do stuff.
I've seen some crazy amounts. To be honest, we haven't found the limit yet. It will run until it solves the problem. There's a way to stop it and put limits on it, but I've seen 3 days, 6 hours I was
Wow.
trying to solve a high frequency trading problem and trying to get very ultra low latency. And so that involves so many convoluted resources being used from AWS and so much unique app code. But yeah, it did it.
So you had some sort of quant trading fund using Kanu to optimize their latency for trading.
So that one wasn't an actual real customer. That was me seeing if I could
messing
solve
around, yeah.
a quant problem
Wow.
with Kanu. But because quants get paid a lot of money
Right.
and they spend a lot of time solving for this one problem. So I was like, what if Kanu just spent 72 hours nonstop trying it themselves? So I took off all of the cost limits, time restrictions, and everything, and it went at it. And yeah, it solved the problem. I can't remember what the latency was, but it was extremely low.
Wow, that's amazing. So if you had to mentor a speedrun or YC company building an AI infra today as we enter 2026, what would be the first question you'd ask them?
I'd say, what was the unique customer insight that you found? Because I think I'd want to know, one, they spent time with their customer, and then two, what did they learn from their time with their customer? Because that's what this is all about, right? We've kind of leveled the playing field in how quickly we can engineer. Now it's how well do you understand what you're building?
What's a recent research paper that has influenced your thinking the most?
This is kind of me not gatekeeping, which I considered doing it, but the ACE paper from Stanford and Berkeley, I think
I heard of that. Maybe you could explain what it is.
It's this idea that instead of fine tuning, your system teaches itself how to do things differently next time. And so that paper, the results that they achieved without fine tuning was groundbreaking. And so when we read through that paper and then we reread it and then we did a whole team read and we realized, okay, we're not going to do post training. There's other techniques that we're going to try first before we go in that direction.
Yeah, I think that's the natural extension. I mean, you had pre-training and then you had test time compute. And now it's possible to kind of like let the AI kind of analyze itself and kind of edit its own weights and fine tune itself based on what's working, what's not. And then you can
Totally.
kind of do that referential loop. And it's kind of how we learn
Totally.
as humans, right? Like, oh, I tried that thing, it didn't work. What is it about that thing that I tried that didn't work? And what would I do differently next time? Okay, let's try that. Okay, let's analyze the results and kind of that's how we learn.
We have to take those cues from humans, and even like software development lifecycle. That's so human nature for us engineers. It's just a process we follow to solve problems. And so we have to kind of build that in ourselves. And post training happens in our brain, and we do fine tune over time. It's not that we shouldn't do that, but it's just not the first approach that we took.
What's one thing that big tech does extremely well that early stage startups should copy?
I think it's those systems that you and I were talking about earlier about Amazon. Those systems, the ability to step out of the room and just know that the things will still happen the way that you intended. I think companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they really nailed those down. Like bar raisers, for example.
So who's your ideal customers? You've been talking to Fortune 50, Fortune 500 customers. So anyone listening, like who are you looking for and who should get in touch? Like,
Yeah.
how do they get in touch?
So we're working with enterprise customers today. Generally, most of the teams that we're speaking to, they have about 10 to 20 engineers plus, and we work with companies as many as 5,000 engineers. And so that's kind of like our ideal persona. Now, that being said, exclusive to this podcast, if you shoot me an email and say you were listening, we have a beta version coming out of a self-service. So this is for your startups or companies that are listening that want to accelerate their engineering. You can just shoot me an email. It's Karan, Karan, at getkanu.com, getkanu.com. Or you can just go to our website and book a demo call there. And then, yeah, we'll get you on the self-service and you can try this out.
That's amazing. Well, I learned a ton. Thanks for coming on and congrats on all the success so far. I can't wait to see what you guys accomplish over the coming years.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and thanks for having us.